Start. Okay. Hello. We're back. We're live. We're the Nerd Ledger. Hello, guys. Yeah. I hope you missed us. Oh, hold on. I don't think it's pulling the desktop audio. But why? Well, I updated OBS, but like it doesn't just pull in desktop audio like automatically. This is like a PC, you know what I'm saying? It's oh, now it is. Okay, talk again. Wait, what? What's happening? Hold on, I'm gonna add it and make sure. Add audio. This one. Okay. All right, now talk. It's not. It's not showing any bores like that you're talking. This is always fun. Yeah. It's not like picking you up at all. Okay, try now. No.
Make sure
okay. Oh, there we go. Got it.
All right, we good?
All right. Jesus.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. That was fun. All right.
Yeah.
Protein shake. Yum.
Yep.
Cool. There we have it. All right. The audience can hear you now if there is one, and I can hear you now. So that's all. Well, I could hear you before too, but yeah. What's up? How's it going, Mr. Chair?
That's all I really got to say. That's the only thing I've been thinking the last 5 or 6 days. It's really hot here in the Bay Area or in the Central Valley and beyond. And even like in San Francisco, it's getting up to 90 degrees, which is like, if you know San Francisco, that's almost unheard of. It's like literally a giant peninsula surrounded by the cold waters of the Pacific. So for it to get that hot, it's a really hot day out. But aside from that, I've just been grinding away at open houses, doing my thing, trying to get some deals going. I got a few things in the works. But aside from that, it's been really chugging along. Finished the Tombs of Atuan again. The second book on the Wizardiversity, that part of that series run that was published, it's 4 books in Ethereum, whatever, is the last one. So that's been really fun. I just got these books special. I actually have paid a little bit of probably too much of a pretty penny for them, but I think it was worth it. They just had custom artwork, and there's like only one of like 200 copies and stuff. So, yeah.
Gotta do your thing.
Yep, it's just cool, the cool looking art. And then the books, it's Ursula K. Le Guin, just probably the greatest American novelist that's ever lived so far. So, she's pretty good.
Apparently, she also hates Harry Potter.
At
least that's what people who hate Harry Potter say online.
Well, I don't know. I just don't want to read anything about her because she died in 2018. So that means she had plenty of time to just have all of her stupid thoughts on the internet, because we all have stupid thoughts. But some people just think that since they're writers, they have like this amazing ability to be amazing on social media with no with no effort whatsoever. And then you look and see what happens. So
the honest truth is, like 95% of the takes I see on Twitter are just completely unreasonable.
Yeah, someone just didn't sit down and think it all the way through. Like they just got seized in the moment. They're like, oh, I want to take some kind of fucking stand here. I want to fucking fight a ceaseless mob on the internet that I don't fucking know because fuck you. That's why.
I almost never see anything on Twitter where I go, that's reasonable. Like almost never.
Yeah.
So, which brings us to, I guess, the topic of the day, the Rings of Power.
Yeah.
You know,
We will.
most of the things I see about this also on Twitter, I think it's just kind of brain rot. But um, yeah, this is a show that's the initial like reviews were really good from critics, but now that it's out, fans mostly have different opinions, but there are quite a few fans who actually really like the show as well. Um, but I kind of went on a journey with this show. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like you
Uh,
personally, like watching the show, or are you like doing some research?
no, just like
Did you watch episode 2 yet? By the
so.
way,
So
sorry.
I did watch episode 2, but I had to do
Okay.
some soul searching
Mm.
because after episode 1, there were like quite a few things that really annoyed me, and then I realized something in my brain that made me think that I wasn't giving the show a fair shot, even though I felt like I was.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I feel like I went in very open minded and like I didn't have any preconceived notions or anything. But then, um, when Gilgalad was like giving Galadriel the gift of going into the West, I
Mm.
was like, this is dumb because all elves go to the West eventually, and this shouldn't be like a gift. And then a day later, when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, wait, this is just like being burdened with knowledge kind of thing because that's wrong. I was wrong
Yeah.
because Galadriel is one of the Noldor who sided with Feanor in the kinslaying and was banished from Valinor, and so it actually does mean something to get that gift.
Way
But
back. Yeah.
like because I'm like that made me feel like I'm unconsciously or subconsciously not giving the show a fair shot if I'm being annoyed by things that I'm like if I'm looking for things to be wrong that aren't even wrong, you know?
Yeah.
So I watched episode 2 and honestly, it was really good. And it made me excited to see future episodes and see what the future of the series will be. Um it'll be its own thing at the end of the day, and that's okay. Um but yeah, I mean there are some things that are still like jarring. Like it's weird to see elves with fades,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like because I was thinking about this and I was also like, well, is this unfair too? Because like a lot of the elves have like shorter hairstyles and whatever, but it's like no one's complaining that hobbits are clean shaven and have short hairstyles as well, you know? Like obviously there's some
But the
form of
hob, but
grooming in Middle Earth.
yeah, but the hobbits have like shortcut, atypical hair that's like typical for someone like would consider to be like a Western male who's trying to tame like that wild part of himself or whatever the classic story is. Like like they like well kept Earth and whatever was one of the opening lines. So maybe they're like well kept facial like. And the thing is like their haircuts just weren't out of like the ordinary. Where they I assume if they can make swords, that means they can make scissors, and that if they can make scissors, they can cut hair. And if
Yeah,
they also have combs, they talk about combs all the time. They
yeah,
have those basic functions. But the ability, like the clipper cut, to do, I just don't know. Like unless, like I'm telling you, dude, like I was. So we had a for we're gonna repeat a lot of things Kaje and I talked about earlier because like we were actually in the car and I just called him because I was driving up to Sacramento and we saw, by the way, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That's not Into the Spider-Verse.
Far from
Far
home.
from
No,
home.
no, no way home.
No
The
Way
more
Home. That's
fun
it.
stuff edition
And
of the
again,
Spider-Man.
we saw the re-release and actually turned out being number 3 in the box office this weekend. That re-release, which is really surprising, and that is totally like this free cash for Marvel in Marvel's market. I don't know what
I think it
else it
mostly
is.
goes to Sony, but
Yeah, but regardless, though, you were right. Just to put this quick thought out there that like No Way Home is actually quite a good movie, and you should go watch it if you haven't watched it. Like it stands on its own 2 legs as a movie. I actually watched it again this weekend, and I was like, damn, like
yeah,
on its own,
it's
it's just a good movie.
surprisingly rewatchable. Like
Yeah,
because of all the big cameos and stuff, you think like, oh, you can never recreate this, or like it's one of those things people will be like, oh, I wish I could experience this for the first time again.
yeah.
Like like seeing Endgame for the first time again with the Avengers Assemble thing and whatever, like being in that theater. Like it's similar with No Way Home because it is like they have those big moments, but it's like it holds up really well on rewatches, and honestly gains so much more rewatching it than the first time.
And some of the cinematography and the effects and the music is just it all really comes together. The acting is pretty good. Even if it is again just the atypical, like the stereotypical plucky group of heroes. So yeah, like his Spider-Man No Way Home, pretty good. Anyway, I was on the way to talk to him. I was on the way to the movie theater to go see the movie with him, and I just called him because they're like he just had finished an episode, and I was like, all right, let's talk about it like now because I think we should let these thoughts ferment. I think the best a good way to do that is just start the conversation now rather than like immediately on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I said something that I still think is really funny. Where again, man, these Elven clippers, they're giving them the fucking fades, like the Elven scissors, bro. Like they're so fine, they can give them a fade just by fucking Wednesday. They're enchanted, bro, for the fade.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I get it. To me, it's a little dumb because I just I like the elves with super long flowing hair. Like that's like one thing that was described pretty hardcore. Like they're very. I can't remember many elves with short, dingy, tangly hair. How many were there?
Well, I mean, Elrond, Celebrimbor, like most of the elves had short hair. Like most of the elves in Galadriel's company, like almost all of them had like shortish hair. Gil-galad is the only one that really had long hair, and his like, dude, for a show that you're putting like $1 billion almost into for one season, you'd think they could have a better wig for Gil-galad. Like,
yeah, exactly.
The wigs in the movie were so good.
Yeah.
Like, look at Legolas's wig.
What I was saying though, okay, then compared to this is being unfair to the show, but just like in the books, are there ever any like elves that have like short, greasy kind of thing?
I can't recall anything being described like that.
It was always long and fair, with the elf.
Well, and also, I mean, you have to understand, like at this point, these elves like are thousands of years old.
Yeah.
And part of the issue with the first episode that I really had was they don't fully explain like the backstories kind of these characters to where the audience would understand what's happening, like because they reference things and it's like most people aren't going to know what you're talking about. So like one example is like when like this elf walks up to Elrond as he's writing and she says, "Oh, you're not invited to like the king's council or whatever. Like people don't want you there or whatever, you know?" And it's like, well, why wouldn't he be invited? Like we all know Elrond from the movie. Elrond is like Lord of Rivendell. Elrond is like a major elf in Middle Earth. Why would he not be invited, right?
Yeah.
And like it's because it's like a council of high elves, which we don't even see that thing, but I'm pretty sure that's where they discuss like the gift that they're going to give Galadriel, right? And her companions. That's what I assume, but we don't see that. But why would Elrond not be invited? Well, for those of us who know a lot of the lore, it's because Elrond is only half elf. And there aren't many of those. And they even reference that in the first episode. Someone says it to Arondir, whatever his name, the faded elf. You know what I'm talking about? What's his name?
Yeah.
Arondir.
Aaron something.
And it's like, oh, there's only been a couple, elf and man relationships, and they don't end well, right?
Mm.
And it's like, well, that's true. But one of those is Elrond. I mean, as a grandchild. His grandfather, Tuor, was a man, married an elf from Gondolin. They had a kid, Arendelle the Mariner. He has the Silmaril on his head. He goes around the sky all cool and shit. But yeah, Elrond is only half elf, but he chose the path of the elf. We talked about this in previous podcasts. If you're half elf, half man, essentially you have there's fate, right? You choose your fate, and he chose to be immortal as an elf, and his brother Eros chose to be immortal as a man, and and his daughter Arwen made her choice by staying with Aragorn, that she would also remain in Middle Earth and essentially allow herself to die eventually. So that's not really explained. So you're just kind of like, oh, why is Elrond not invited? It doesn't make much sense. I mean, the whole again, why is it such a gift to allow Galadriel to go to the West? We don't. They don't explain anything of the Noldor and the kinslaying and whatever. Like none of that. They don't
Mm.
really explain Finrod very well, other than that's her brother. The opening scene is really stupid with the boat on the water. Like I get it. They're trying to set up these themes throughout the show and like give it an internal consistency.
Mm.
But it's one of those things where it's like they continuously do things seemingly from their knowledge of the lore and then don't explain the lore to the people watching the show.
Yeah. That all makes sense. I'm just like I wish I could say that I really have a deep understanding of Galadriel and Gil-galad and Elrond and all these guys, but all I've really read is like Lord of the Rings and some character works and stuff like that. But I've never like read hardcore the Silmarillion or any of the extended works or anything like that. Mainly because I don't know, like I've just never felt like the general want or need to. So I just moved on to other fantasy novels. Uh, Maybe I should go back and read some of them at some point, maybe to have a deeper understanding of these characters. Like I don't
It
know.
won't help necessarily. Like
Yeah.
because the thing people don't understand or ignore some whatever, like Tolkien continuously wrote and rewrote his characters and his stories. So the Galadriel you see in certain iterations of the history of Middle Earth or the books of Lost Tales, they're gonna differ in certain ways. And the version we eventually get. I mean, the version of Lord of the Rings is his true version, but before that, I mean, there's 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, crazy amount of years of history before that for Galadriel. And Christopher Tolkien chose to publish what he felt was the most cohesive version of her that his dad had written and published that in the Silmarillion and extended works beyond that were released after Tolkien's death, which is all fair. But there's other works, letters that he's written and things that you can find where he has different ideas of Galadriel as well. And this is the same for characters like Glorfindel. There's two different versions of the character Glorfindel because he wrote Glorfindel for The Lord of the Rings, where he shows up in Fellowship and takes Frodo to Rivendell. And then later on, he's writing these extended works, and the name comes up again, and he's like, "Oh, well, now I have to, bring him back to life and stuff like that." Like, it happens, and like if you're reading the appendices, I mean, there was a king before, like a long time ago, called Faramir, who's not the Faramir in the Lord of the Rings, right? Like a lot of names come up again that are different characters, and on top of that, you have characters with like 20 different names for themselves. So it can be very confusing and very conflicting. And even if you have read everything from Tolkien, you're not necessarily going to get a cohesive idea of all of the characters and who they are because there are different iterations of them. And that's kind of the beauty of Tolkien, right? Is like he's telling a story that's meant to be a story that's been retold over and over and over and has changes based on who's telling it. And now we're getting Amazon's iteration, and I think it's okay to allow them to have their own interpretation and their own, because it doesn't have to be Tolkien's version, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. Like, and like you said, I got a lot to say about the Tolkien camp and how they've handled things over the years, and whether or not it would have been, I don't know. With that all being said, like I completely understand that this just isn't going to be a one-to-one copying of Tolkien's like lore. I've carried that with me the entire time, like anticipating the show, preparing for it to come forward and everything like that. So thankfully, like that part was never like with me, like that judgment, that prejudgment of the show, and I've been able to kind of give it a very good virgin watch without like having those outside influences kind of like impacting my interpretation, where I just kind of watched it on whether or not it was like a good and entertaining show, and whether or not it was entertaining, like to other people, and unfortunately, I think like I've said this before and I'll say it again. Like without the full rights, so that they can like reference certain things and say certain things. Um, as far as the lore goes, or this being like a consistent Lord of the Rings show, like it's just the foundation that the show is built upon is just fundamentally flawed. It's just that's a fact of life you need to come to understand about this show. Like without all the rights and everything they need to make the show that they wanted to make, they probably had to cut a lot of shit. That's just what happens. Like they make like if writers at Amazon had any like idea how to let writers write, you let them write what they want to write, and then you gotta go back and have your lawyers and legal team pour over it to see if they're using a bunch of copyrighted shit that they just don't own the rights to. And they probably had to cut and chop around that kind of shit. And that's probably why the script sometimes, even in the first and second episode, seems janky or poorly paced or anything like that. And they got a lot of backfilling to do. And I'm excited though that the show isn't completely a fucking dumpster fire. It's actually like a good show. Like you said, episode 2 was quite good. Episode 1 was just full of a lot of things that I really didn't like. I'm not sure if other people really like them, but I feel like it's just hard for like a show to start off on such a stumble with that it being its first episode, having so many things that I just don't like. Like you and I. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, episode 1 to me, even with my reframing in my brain and whatever, is like, it's just there's so many annoying moments for me, and like really, the biggest one is like, this lady just abandons her child. And like, I get it, he's supposed to be like a teenager or something, but like some of that stuff is kind of a stretch. Like the fact that the cow traveled a mile to eat some grass, or not a mile, but like a day's walk to eat some grass, and then traveled back and is like spewing black goo out of it, like kind of weird. All right, it's just like little things like that are just like kind of annoying. But episode 2 almost feels like a new start. It feels almost completely different than episode 1 in a lot of ways. Like episode 1 is, sure, it's trying to do this heavy lifting or whatever, and it's like, to me, episode 1 almost feels like a prologue in and of itself. Like the whole episode just kind of feels like, here are the characters that you will see, and here's our jumping off point: Galadriel denying the West, right? But at the same time, it's like I don't really care about Galadriel's weird mission, and like her, like, it's cool. They fought they fought a mountain troll. Cool. That's cool to see. But like, I don't know. It felt weird. The pacing felt weird. Like parts of it felt really slow. Other parts felt really rushed. Again, they're showing you things or telling you things without giving you the proper backstory to understand those things. And while it is true, like in Tolkien's lore, that Galadriel denies going to Valinor, like she is offered the ability to go to Valinor, and she says no. It's not like a last second jump off the bow in the middle of nowhere, with very little chance of surviving, and like gates of heaven opening before you. Like I get it. That's how many people think of Valinor. Like they think of it as like this heavenly plane you're being transcended to. But at this point, it's not that. It's not even close to that. Valinor is literally an island on the planet. And like, it's very important for people to be able to go there, especially if we're looking at Numenor in the future. Like, that's kind of the whole point of the story of Numenor, is like they go to Valinor, like, and then it gets removed from Earth. But Valinor is not supposed to be like this ascendant heavenly plane that like you're blinded by like while you're arriving there. Like I don't like that interpretation, but that's fine. Like clouds part, you can go there, whatever. But the idea that you go there and can never come back or something, like, I don't know, it looked weird to me.
Yeah, I was a little distracted that episode, to be honest, during those scenes of Galadriel, because she was in a white dress. So I'm probably a little too thirsty. But like the shark attack was cool. Everyone was like, mind was blown by it, but it seemed like a very atypical, like like Leviathan attack things. Maybe I don't know. My mind is just rotted by video games when it comes to like epic scene making. Maybe. But I just thought the episode, like both episodes in whole, like you're right. Like episode one was just kind of a stumble, and then episode two is like the actual, like first step, and
Yeah,
it's
I mean, because episode one, honestly, Elrond is pretty boring. Like, okay, cool. He's writing the speech that Gilgalad is giving. Whatever. That's whatever. Like, it's cool to see Linden. Like, it's cool to see these places we haven't really seen before in live action and stuff, or anything really, except our imaginations or paintings. And it's cool, but it's like episode one, I felt was very soulless. Like, it didn't feel like anything to me. It just kind of felt empty. Whereas episode two, like, these characters are getting personality now. Like, the show is having a personality. Like, episode one, all I really thought was interesting was like the Harfoot stuff, which like at least there was some soul there.
yeah.
But episode two, I mean, I thought Elrond was an MVP of this episode. Elrond, Durin,
All the dwarf stuff was fantastic.
yeah,
All of it.
it was really good. I mean, people might be upset and think it's really stupid that Durin was that upset or whatever that Elrond didn't show up for his wedding or whatever. Like,
I
but
don't think
there's
I don't
something
think
deeper there.
I think he. That's not. Yeah. That's no. Like no. That's really dumb if you think like there's no good cause for him to be upset at Elrond for just like never showing up and then finally showing up when he like fucking wants something.
Yeah, and especially because Durin says something to Elrond that like actually I wrote something similar in a poem like 2 months ago that I was writing, but like it wasn't about elves. It was just like the wording was similar, but he said something like 70 years or whatever, or might be like a blink of an eye to an elf, but like for a dwarf, like that's much like even though dwarves still live significantly longer than men, you know what I'm saying. Yeah, it's tough. You can definitely understand where Durin's coming from. But I liked episode two quite a lot. I guess the big question right now is about the stranger, who is pretty clearly a wizard of some sort. And the speculation is that it's Gandalf, I think.
Yeah, because some people are saying that as simple as like he landed near hobbits. That's why. That's why they assume. That's why they assume.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true.
unfortunately, I don't think Gandalf would inadvertently kill a bunch of fireflies, and be that quick to anger. It could be one of the blue wizards. I doubt it's Radagast, or it could be Saruman, but I don't think it's Gandalf or Radagast. That's just my personal thought. I could be completely wrong. Again, if you're going by Tolkien's lore, Gandalf doesn't show up till the Third Age, or right around the Third Age. So you could say it can't be Gandalf, but it's a show. They can do whatever they want. It could absolutely be Gandalf. I don't think it is, but it absolutely could be, right? You would think if it was Saruman, that would also make very little sense, because Gandalf is the only one who ever really pays attention to hobbits. And if Saruman landed in Middle-earth amongst hobbits, you would think he would pay a little more closer attention to them and realize how remarkable they are despite their stature, right? So logically, I think it's a blue wizard, but it could absolutely be Gandalf. I mean, the show stands to profit the most off of characters like Gandalf, or characters we're familiar with. Otherwise, they wouldn't be focusing primarily on characters like Galadriel and Elrond. They would focus on, they would do, like, they have the rights to the appendices. They would focus on, like, the stewardship and things of the Second Age in Gondor and stuff, right? But they're not, because most of us aren't familiar with those characters. So it absolutely could be Gandalf. I do quite like the Harfoots.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like the soul, like, and I think it's just more that there's really great chemistry between all of the actors, and that's difficult to get all together at the same time. And like they feel like a big rowdy, like family group of people. And
Right.
yeah, it's pretty dope. And I think it's like funny too, like how they're putting up things for like pavilion, like what they do at the Hobbiton for near the party tree. Like they
Yeah.
put the pavilion. So that's
Yeah.
a really fun
That
subtle callback that I really liked.
when you say that, it makes me a little remiss about the Peter Jackson films because like the old tree, the big tree in Hobbiton, that's like that they have Bilbo's party at and stuff. They don't show it in the movies, but like the tree gets chopped up in this in the books, right? Like, and when they come back during the Scouring of the Shire, like they see it's gone.
Mm.
Um, but Sam's able to replant it because Galadriel, as a gift, gives him some of the soil from Lothlorien, right? And it's like magic soil, right? Imbued with her magic. And so he's able to regrow the tree like fast, not like instantly, but like that's something that's like always good to read and something you'd want to see, but you never see. So sad.
Mm.
But yeah, but yeah, like episode 2 just feels like we have a direction. It feels like we're doing like even the stuff with Galadriel and Halbrand. I don't really care about it very much. Like I don't know why. It's just like it doesn't interest me. Like I'm pretty sure at the end, like they're being rescued by a boat. I'm pretty sure it's the Numenorians rescuing them, but we'll have to see what happens because like some of this lore can get really weird, considering that like Elrond marries Galadriel's daughter, and apparently in the show she's not even born yet. So, I mean, who knows what they're gonna do? We know they're gonna do all these time jumps, but
I don't know. Like we mean like weird. Mean like what? That she'll be like 1,000 years old, and he'll be like what 3,000 years old. But
well,
like that's the inherent nature of
which is
how things
weird
work.
that
Like
like
that would make like that would make like what's his name's daughter, fucking Elrond's daughter, the ultimate predator on Aragorn.
yeah, but Arwen doesn't watch Aragorn grow up. Like she meets him as an adult. You know what I mean? Whereas like Elrond is gonna like see his future wife as a 0-year-old baby.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't know. It's a weird thing with elves and like a weird concept that we have for ourselves too. Like
Yeah.
there are people that are in like where
Yeah.
the age gap is quite distinct in a number of relationships like that now. And I don't know. It's a difficult conversation to have, and it's a difficult topic to think about.
Right. So ultimately, what I will say, because I feel like episode 2 does a lot more for fan service than episode 1 did. In it, except for like episode 1, we saw like the actual prologue, and we see like Sauron and stuff, which looks pretty cool. But and some of the stuff from old battles, like eagles fighting fell beasts and stuff, like that's all interesting. But episode 2, I frequently was asked by my wife to pause because she had questions. And so, the dwarves keep saying Aule's beard, and it's like, most people probably don't know who Aule is, right?
Mm.
So I paused it so I could explain who Aule was. They mentioned Morgoth and the Silmarils, and most people probably don't know the story of the Silmarils because the Silmarillion is not an easy thing to read. And even if you are reading it, you're probably skipping most of that stuff. But so, there's little things in there that I think are references for people who know that lore, that's like, hey, you guys are being included too. Oh my God. Please reduce power. Please reduce power. Even though it's 120 degrees, please turn off your air conditioning. Thank you, State of California. I appreciate that. Did you get the alert?
No, the Discovery. Oh yeah.
You got it. Conserve energy now to protect public health and safety. Extreme heat is straining the state emergent energy grid. Power interruption may occur unless you take action.
Yeah, mine says just turn off or reduce non-essential power if health allows. Doesn't say anything about turning off my AC or anything like that.
No, but that's what it means. It's
Yeah, I got my house turned up to 78. Like, I'm trying. The problem is, like, I don't know, even 78, like, it's still blaring nonstop. That's actually why I left the office early today, because it was just me in there, and, like, we have the fucking commercial AC for our commercial building, and I had it down to 78 in case a client walks in, and it was just blaring nonstop. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to close down early and leave, because there's no point. There's no one was coming in anyway.
Yeah.
Just don't leave fucking lights on around the house. What can I say?
I mean, pretty much I'm using non-essential power right now because I'm streaming.
How many watts is how many watts is that? Yeah, I have a 600 watt. I have a 600 watt power supply. So
I don't know anything about watts, to be honest, but
it's good for my mental health.
I like John Watts.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna use the oven after this too. My fucking power doesn't go out when I'm trying to cook my tendies, bro. I'm really upset.
Yeah, same. Oh, I mean, I have mac and cheese I made last night. I made from scratch mac and cheese, and I have leftovers, so I was gonna warm it up. So hopefully the microwave doesn't die. But yeah. Anyway, like I was saying about the Rings of Power, yeah, I'm actually excited for it, like for the future of it. And
like same. I'm just glad that it's not completely fucking garbage. Like that's the most important thing. That it's not all like episode 1. How episode 2 has some genuinely heart-filled writing that seems like it was written by adults. Or episode 1, we get Galadriel fighting a frost troll by spinning her sword around and I don't know, stabbing it. And literally striking poses at the camera and shit while she's doing it, and it just looks so stupid. And I think the idea I was reading after, the idea was supposed to be communicating that she's like a 3,000-year-old elven fighter warrior lady thing. And I'm just like, okay, does she need to why does she need to do sword twirls? Why can't she just do a really kill the frost troll in one really good stab right through its heart or something like that? Because she's killed 200 of these things over 2,000 years of being alive. I don't. I don't know.
Because man,
they
have to show you, man.
They have to do the twirls.
The twirly thing.
The twirl sword. Anyway, so I thought that was really stupid. And again, that stuff with the children in the very beginning of episode 1 was something I think you and I both agreed was really soulless and dumb and complete Oscar bait.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay, cool. Finrod's gonna give you some advice, Neato Burrito, but you don't need this weird setup to do that. To me, it feels like they're trying to tie, or they're trying to kill two birds with one stone. They're trying to show that Galadriel was an exile. Galadriel was, she wasn't very well liked because essentially the stuff with the Noldor, but they don't show any of that, so you have no context. And you're just wow, kids are really assholes. You know what I mean? It's thank you. I never knew.
Yeah, I never would have figured that one out exactly.
And they're well, let's show that kids are assholes, and let's show that hey, she's gonna make the bow, and hey, let's have them explain the darkness thing. You have to touch the darkness, and this is blah blah blah. And it's yes, we all know where Galadriel ends up. We all know Galadriel. Well, okay, I shouldn't say we all know, but if you've watched Lord of the Rings, this is something I feel has always confused people who've only watched the movies. When Galadriel is offered the ring and then she goes all satanic mode and she says, "I passed the test," right? And people are what the fuck does that mean, right? And it's Galadriel's always known she would be tested. She would ultimately have to make the decision of trying to be good or trying to seize power. This is something Galadriel is an ambitious elf. And she does desire power, and she does desire sovereignty, and that's why she made Lothlorien. Right?
Yeah.
And by denying the ring, by saying no to that, she passed the test. She is not seizing power. She is not remaining in Middle Earth as a ruler. She's able because it's a lot to explain for people who don't know, but it's as an elf who is of a group of elves that betrayed other elves or betrayed their own elves, right? They betrayed the Teleri, but anyway, right? She's from a race of elves that murdered other elves, right? And in doing so, they were exiled from Valinor. And Galadriel made some choices during that time, even though she never killed anybody or killed other elves, that were kind of, that kind of walk the line. Like, she's not being good, but she's not evil either. And so, she's always had to question, or it's always in her mind that she's from a race that did the most evil thing you could do, that got you banished from Valinor. And even though they said, you've done great things now, Galadriel, you can go to Valinor, we're giving you permission to go to the West, she never truly felt like she earned it, right? And that's not why she doesn't go. I mean, mostly she doesn't go because she doesn't want to leave Middle Earth while she thinks Sauron's still there. Like, that's true in the show, and that's true in the lore. But when she finally, makes that decision to not take the ring, that's where she says, I'm worthy now. I can go into the West. I deserve it, right? I don't have to be here anymore. Like, I am Galadriel. I'm not this evil ruler queen or whatever. I'm Galadriel. I can go to the West now. I passed the test. And so, maybe I didn't fully explain everything in there, but, essentially that's where that comes from. And this is her journey to that point, right? So, the Galadriel we see in The Lord of the Rings should be much different than the Galadriel we see here, because this Galadriel is, 2,000, 3,000 years younger, and she's got a lot of growing to do in that time. So
yeah, a lot of growing to do in this show. Maybe it'll turn around, because it's weird. Like you said, the thing that you and I thought we would care about the most, Galadriel's story, seems to be at least the most uninspired and least interesting out of all the stories that they're laying out before us. Me personally, I really think the Hobbit stuff is actually really cute and quirky and really cool, and I think the writing is really, really strong there. And I think comes up next is Elrond stuff. And episode 2, we'll probably get deeper into this when we do an actual legitimate, scene by scene review. But episode 2, Elrond just has some really great lines, like when he's expressing sorrow to his friend and stuff like that for missing out on 20 years of his life. And, just saying, oh, that's no biggie. And also, just 10 out of 10 acting, 100% great writing.
Yeah.
200% amazing scenes, stuff on the elevator.
And the thing is, they also walk this weird line in episode 2 where Elrond is, apologetic and whatever, but it's, they make you kind of question, is he apologizing because he wants something and he's just doing it to get the help, or does he genuinely, mean it? And I think he is actually being genuine. I think he does actually care and feel bad that he hurt Durin. And his wife, Disa, who there was a lot made of her in promo because people were upset that there was a black dwarf with no beard. She was great. I don't know what people just get mad about stupid things these days. You shouldn't be mad. Again, like I said, it is jarring to see an elf with a fade. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, it's not jarring to see black people.
I hope not.
And people who want to be upset will be upset. People who want to find something to be mad about will be. They can just be did you notice any person of significance or whatever in most of the races was a person of color or a woman? Yeah, nobody cares. We're watching the show to learn about the show. The race of the characters, to me, honestly, is meaningless. And even though, you could say, well, Tolkien described him this way, that's fine. But if you read Tolkien's work, you'd have a deeper understanding of how this is just a non-issue. It's very, he describes many cases of races, in his work, it's dwarves, elves, men, whatever, hobbits, etc. Many different races either working together or being opposed to each other for different reasons, and overcoming differences or letting their differences divide them, and you would acknowledge that like this is not really a big deal. Like I'm rereading Children of Her and now, and um I think I don't think it was elves, but like there's a petty dwarf named Mim, and I think he's arguing with Androg, who's a man, and like maybe it's someone else, but like there was like a mention of like Androg or whoever the man was like, we know like we have lots of tales of what the petty dwarfs did to our ancestors or whatever, right? Like that's why we don't like them. And Mim said, yeah, we also have tales, but I'm sure the result is different or something, right? Like, yeah, different races will have different perspectives on things, and that's just how it is. But sometimes they help you, sometimes you overcome your differences, and sometimes not. And like Tolkien never made a commentary on like different races. I mean, the dude studied in South Africa. Like, of course, there were a lot of apartheid and a lot of white people, but still, like
he didn't. Well, another thing too is like he never really suffered directly from like when he was in South Africa, he was probably studying in university. I don't really know what he was doing in South Africa, but since he's a lifelong academic, I assume that he was doing something related to university or university adjacent, and that probably means sitting in a nice place for a while, writing down some things and reading books about things, and maybe receiving a lecture on some things, like really areas that are secluded off from the intense violence that took place in South Africa for a very long amount of time against the native population. So, I just don't think we should like look to Tolkien for perspectives on that.
And again, like that shouldn't matter, right? The writer, like Tolkien is revered, and like his influence is revered, but like his life shouldn't necessarily matter, and he would be the first one to tell you, don't.
We're wondering what he wrote about this, and he did. When one day when Sam was like, when they watched the ambush, and he pulled out, he pushed over an enemy soldier, and he said he wonder like if he really wanted to be here, or if this guy wanted to be back home too, and then Sam felt kind of sad, and like I think that has basically all Tolkien really needs to say on it, and that's like the perfect way he could have put it. It's good. It's a good way of addressing it. How he addressed it specifically in the book. How there's just he. Some people get dragged into things by the machinations of others, and like they get involved, and we should all go home and leave each other alone and eat good food. There we go. End of the day.
Right, and this is something that's been coming to a head with me personally. Is like because I'm on Twitter, and like I really only use it to like.
That's why I deleted Twitter and Reddit. Like I even deleted my own Reddit, even though like my Reddit account had like 8 years of me like kind of had like a personal story with it. Like me learning and growing through Reddit, like getting karma and losing karma, and like having hundreds of thousands of comments on my Reddit account and stuff like that. Yeah. And I just deleted it because Reddit, at the end of the day, it's really trying to drag you into this stupid culture war. But I'll kind of be honest with me, I don't really think there's like a culture war. I think that like idea is really dumb. Like, and I think it's just a bunch of people trying to gin stuff up so that they can like sell things and make money. And I think that's all that really matters at the end of the day.
Really, it's people either in their corners or looking for echo chambers. Like that's what social media is. And
it rots your fucking brain. Like that's the exact thing I'm saying. Like it really does just get you thinking into this us versus them box, rather than just having an inquisitive nature that should be attributed to most people who like to bury themselves in academic. Like I like to consider myself. Eventually, one day, I would like to consider myself a scholar. So, like, that takes a lot of effort and, like, having actual published papers, and maybe I would have to go back to college at some point. I don't know. Right. And it's just a really nuanced conversation. And,
well, it's tough because, like, for us, we talk with each other, and, like, part of this is, like, we should hopefully be entertaining, so... You know, we might say things
millions
that
of fans or millions of viewers on Twitch right now who are stunned silent with the gravitas of this conversation. For sure.
Exactly. But it's like, we might say, like, I might have a strong opinion and you might disagree, and then we might argue about it a little bit. Like, not, nothing like crazy, but like, you know, but at the end of the day, like, I'm glad you have your own opinion, and like, I don't want to change your mind, Yeah. And like, so I'll see people just on Twitter arguing like about things, and like people, and like I said, sometimes I think their takes are actual brain rot, but like, I'm not going to argue with them, and I'm not going to post anything and tell them they're wrong or tell them they have to think like I do. Like, good for them. If they hate the Rings of Power, good for them. They don't have to watch it and whatever. Like, I don't really care, you know? And it doesn't take away from my happiness or my enjoyment. And the only thing is, like, this past week, I've been questioning if I'm losing my mind because everyone hates She-Hulk.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too. I was thinking, like, the amount... Like, I was watching She-Hulk last night. Like, I was like, okay, I watched episode 1. I was like, okay, it's actually pretty good. So I'll watch episode 2 and 3. And I remember I was just, like, just cruising my YouTube page, which, again, is, like, 10 years of me subscribing to random-ass channels. So it's a really weird stew of all kinds of media now. And, like, it just seems like people either love it or they're rushing to its defense. Like, and it's just... I mean, I'm sorry. They either, like, hate it or they're rushing to its defense. Like, and they absolutely abysmally hate it. And, like, it's just kind of somewhere in the middle. Like, it's like, okay, it's not like, there's nothing, like, it's supposed to be comedy. There's nothing so far that's been gut-wrenchingly funny to me that made me pause, like, whatever I was doing and just fucking watch and laugh my ass off. Not yet, anyway. I haven't watched episode 3 yet, actually, because, like, I had to stop doing it, because I have family over right now, and I had to stop watching to go help them out and stuff, and I probably turned on something else. And it's I just, it's the problem, like I said, everything is just getting so antagonistic.
Well, because everybody thinks everything is just such a social commentary, and like, sure, a lot of things maybe are, but like, you have to be looking for it, I think. And like, dude, am I losing my mind? Am I the only one who watched episode 1 and didn't think that Jen was telling Hulk, "I've had it so much worse than you," and really what she's saying is, "This is my experience, and this is why I feel like I can control anger." Like. But everything I see is people just saying, no, she's talking down to Bruce and talking shit about him, about how he can't control his anger, and she's so much better at everything. And like, did I miss something? Do I need to rewatch the episode?
Exactly. Like, there's things I didn't pick up on at all when I was watching that episode. That, like, that speech, like, she actually lost control in that speech.
That's the whole point.
Exactly. Like, she literally... And then, like, the thing is, the problem, I think, is with episode 1... Okay, we're talking about She-Hulk now, I guess. The problem is with episode 1 is that I really just don't think they explained her powers very well. Like, it seems like it's almost like she shifts at inconvenient times from Hulk and back, like, and even like the shift back into a human can also be inconvenient at times,
Well,
and
I think the other problem is everyone complaining is a dude. Let's be honest. Like none of us should be out here saying we understand the experience of a woman or discounting the trauma that women face. Like, we don't know, we don't live that life, and it doesn't even apply to all women. But like, if you listen to women, this is a genuine concern. Like, this is the same thing. Like, this is the same anti-white privilege thing where people are like, oh, white privilege doesn't exist, blah blah blah. But it's like, if you say to those people, like, you as a white person, like, think about privilege in this way. You've never had the experience necessarily of just walking into a room and being the only person that looks like you, and that's kind of similar to white privilege. Like, we don't have to consider, oh, I'm not going to go to this part of town because this is how I might be treated, right? Like, that's white privilege, and that exists. And also, men have privilege. Let's be honest. I used to, like, this was like, I was super surprised when like, I don't know why I was surprised. Like, I grew up with a single mom and a sister, and none of this ever occurred to me until my wife said something to me, like, when we were first dating. Like, I used to go out with my friend and my roommate. Like, we would walk around at like 2-3 in the morning at night. And and I was telling my wife about this, like, because I was like, oh, we could go for a walk. And it was like nighttime, and she's like, what? And I was like, well, do it all the time. Like, people just, we just walk around at 2-3 in the morning, go for long walks, whatever. And she was like, women can't do that. Yeah. Like, women don't go for walks with their girlfriends or alone, like, in the middle of the night. Like,
yeah,
that's like, and like, as a male, I never had to think about that. So like, how can I as a male watch She-Hulk and be like, wow, catcalling, no big deal? Yeah, catcalling sometimes leads to harassment and assault, and like, we don't understand that. We don't have that viewpoint or that trauma, and it's not being a snowflake, and it's not being a whatever. Like, we can't discount someone else's trauma, even if we disagree with it. Like, it just makes no sense to me, and I don't feel like she was saying, Bruce, I'm better than you. You don't understand. Like, yes, of course, Bruce also has trauma, but his job in that instance is not to argue with Jen. That's why he's passive about it. That's why he's like allowing her to go through it. And we also have to understand, in the context of the show, she just became a Hulk, and she's under a lot of pressure, and she's probably very overwhelmed. And again, you can't discount what someone's going through anyway.
Yeah. And too, like, the story was, like, I don't know, like, a lot of guys or whatever men, people on the internet, like, tried to make what she was talking about, like you said, like, it was her, I don't know. I'm going to try and describe this. Because to me, it seemed about, like, all of her stress and her reluctance comes from the fact that she didn't want to be a superhero. Like, that wasn't her thing. And, like, there's some guys saying, like, oh, that's because, like, I don't know where I'm trying to go with this. They were trying to make it so, like, that her whole motivations were, like, coming from, like, her just hating men in general, and not from the fact that she was, like, actively trying to avoid, like, she doesn't want to be a superhero. She's a lawyer. I work at the DA's office. I have a career in a 401k, and all this other stuff
her
that I
life
need
is
to,
hard
like,
enough without that pressure,
Yeah, exactly.
Which maybe people are mad because if you look at comic book She-Hulk, yeah, it's a little different. She-Hulk in comics, Jennifer Walters is kind of a loser. She's unattractive. Nobody cares about her. She doesn't really have many friends. She's not popular. She just does her job, whatever. Like, and then she becomes She-Hulk, and like she's sexy and people love her, and she's a phenomenon. And now she's popular, and like that's like she embraces it because of those things.
Mm.
Whereas this is like she's still kind of a loser and like just a good lawyer or whatever, but like she's treated differently than her male colleagues, which happens in real life. Like
especially in law offices, like especially on the East Coast.
And
like
maybe it's not like it doesn't happen everywhere. It's not super prevalent or whatever. Like for some people, like, but it happens enough that it's relevant to post, right? Like, or to put in a show. So, like, again, like she gets these powers and she's like, great, I have debt, I have all this stuff, like all these things are already happening to me, and now this has happened to me. And it's like we do see her begin to embrace it, right? But it's like she's now also feeling like it's still like not about Jen. Nobody cares about Jen. Now everybody just cares about She-Hulk, right? She gets fired because of She-Hulk, and then she gets a new job because of She-Hulk, right? So I don't know. I think the show is fun, and doing this weird like discounting trauma, or like she thinks she's better than Bruce or whatever. Like, I think it's a waste of time and energy. And honestly, if you guys watch this show, just like The Rings of Power, if you're watching it and you enjoy it, who cares what anybody else thinks? And if you don't enjoy it, then that's fine too. I'm not going to change your mind. Nobody's going to change your mind. You don't have to enjoy it. But don't try to convince anybody else that they can't enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, we're almost at an hour, and we got stuff to do. So, we'll come back either next week or later this week. Who knows? Maybe we'll go more in depth about the Rings of Power.
Rings of Power. Yeah, I think we'll do probably an episode play by play, probably scene by scene. I'll probably do a rewatch, then we'll probably do a hardcore deep dive on She-Hulk here in the coming future.
I mean, there's still new episodes coming out, so there's always those. And then I mean, there's still other things, other topics I have, just for a sunny day when we have nothing else to talk about. But I'll just end with saying we talked about this news last week, I think, about that one guy potentially being DC's Kevin Feige, the guy who did like the Lego movies and stuff.
Yeah.
He's turned it down, so he's not going to be that guy. So that's it.
That's hell funny.
Thanks anybody listening, watching, whatever. Much love. Have a good one. Subscribe, like, press buttons, review, rate, etc. Bye.